Good evening, everyone. I hope you've been enjoying catching up with your friends today. It's now time to start the meeting, so if you could take your seats, and if committee members could come up to the head table, please. If you could all please come up and take seats. And Matt, are we all right sitting down, or we are? Great. Okay, look, thank you for coming along tonight. On behalf of the Ruapehu Ski Club Committee, it's my great pleasure to welcome everyone to our, and there's a bit of confusion here, we think it is our 110th annual general meeting, but let's just say our 2022 annual general meeting. Look, it's wonderful to see so many friendly faces, and I was especially pleased to see you here, Jim. Lovely to catch up with you again. And also, we have a number of new members with us tonight, and we did send out information to you via email that if you had ordered a name badge, you could collect it here tonight if you came along. So the name badges are all out on the table by the door where you came in. Sophie will be able to help you with that. If you raise your hand, Sophie, there, down the back there. So if you'd ordered name badges, they should be over there. I'd especially like to thank those of you who have come from out of Auckland to be present. I know there's a couple of my fellow Rotorurians here as well. Always good to see them, best city in New Zealand. And I hope you've had a nice time catching up with friends over the last hour. Okay, and don't forget we will be serving tea and coffee and I think a little snack at the end of the meeting, a little sweet. So do stay on and chat with your friends then. I'd like to thank Marion for organising the AGM this evening, and also special thanks to Matt Lamb, who has come in to live stream the meeting. So I know there are a number of people watching online who couldn't get along here tonight, so everyone wave to them. and for those of you that can't be here and are watching, welcome to the meeting as well. Now, because we're live streaming, it's very important that we use the microphone when we speak. So we will have someone to run up and down. If you have questions at various stages on the finances or in general business, you do need to use the microphone to speak, or the people on live stream won't be able to hear you. So we've only got one mic, unfortunately, so we'll run it backwards and forwards. Okay. And also, when we call for proposers and seconders, you need to be a senior current financial member. And also, can you please state your name loudly so we can get it on the record? That would be great. Right, then, this is always a sad bit of the meeting where we acknowledge over the last 12 months those people that many of us have said goodbye to in our families and in the RSC as well. So I'd ask you all to stand for a moment's silence. This is a time for us to remember these important people in our lives, the impact they've had and on our lives, RSC, and to think of their families who are adjusting to life without them. Thank you very much. We also have circulating two clipboards. One is for your attendance, so if you put down that you're here so we can get you in the minutes, and also for any apologies you have. And I have received a couple of apologies. We have apologies from Paula Cooper, who's unable to be here today because she's sick. Who else have we got? Peter Brady was unable to attend, and Barbara Skelly, so our patron and patroness, unfortunately weren't able to come tonight. And Donald Webster from committee was unable to attend tonight. I also would like to note that our very dear past President Sandy Mills and his wife Joan weren't able to come tonight, and we note their apologies as well. Now, if you have some other apologies you'd like to add, please add them to the clipboard that's circulating. So would someone, I would like to, no, actually, would someone like to move that we accept the apologies? And that's Jebby. Thank you, Jebby. Do I have a seconder? Someone who is second? That's John Payne. Thank you very much, John. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Any against? That's carried. Thank you very much. So we move on to confirmation of minutes from the 2021 AGM, and a copy of the minutes was distributed, or a link to the minutes was distributed with the notice of this AGM that was sent out to you all. So I would ask that two people move and second that the minutes for the AGM held on the 30th of June 2021 be approved and adopted excuse me, as a true and accurate record. And yes, Louise has moved that. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Andrew. And does anyone have any corrections or additions to make? Sometimes we miss someone off on the attendee list. No, that's great. I will then put that to you. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? And that is carried. Thank you very much. So we move on to a bit that I love because I don't have to speak. We're moving on to the adoption of the annual reports, accounts and auditors. And I'm pleased to ask our Treasurer, Sonia, to speak briefly to the accounts and auditors report to 31st of December 2021 and to answer any questions you may have. Once again, these reports were circulated, or links to them were circulated with the notice of the AGM we sent out to people. Sonia.
Okay, so the last 2 years have been incredibly difficult for the club. In a COVID environment, they've been tough on our finances and our ability to generate income. We also have a large amount of fixed costs that, regardless of what level of income we bring in, still have to be paid. So the result for the 2021 financial year ending 31st of December is a deficit of $18,000. This is in comparison to a surplus in the 2020 year of $46,000. Our cash position over the 2 years has remained relatively consistent, with $368,000 in the bank at the end of 2021. It's a decrease on 2020, but an increase on our position at 2019. Of this, $96,000 is actually your money. It belongs to you in your membership deposit accounts for effectively what is prepaid accommodation. We've taken a number of steps to try and minimise our financial risk during the last couple of years. We've vacated the Auckland office and we've only employed 3 chefs over the last 2 seasons and left the hut closed for 2 years. We're looking forward this year to a return to a more normal year with increased levels of accommodations and all 4 of our buildings open and fully utilised. Income generated by our members for 2021 was down compared to prior years, and as I said, we posted a deficit of $18,000. The impact of the nationwide lockdown in August and the ongoing lockdowns in Auckland and Waikato had a huge impact as the majority of our members live in those areas. Accommodation income was $102,000 for the year from 2,514 bunk nights, compared to 135 from 2,824 bunk nights the year before. And it was well down from the 278,000 and 6,815 bunk nights that we had in 2019. So you can see the impact that COVID's had. Our average income per bunk night for 2021 was also slightly lower than 2020. Part of that was actually an increased utilisation over the summer months, which incurs a lower tariff. Subscription income in 2021 was just under 170, of which 8,000 remained uncollected at the end of the year. We also received a little over $40,000 from the government in subsidies for COVID and resurgent payments for 2021, which has basically made all of the difference. While there are some expenses that are tied to occupancy levels in our building, most of our costs are fixed. The largest cost after our salaries and wages is insurance, which has continued to climb year on year. Total insurance for 2021 exceeded $71,000. This is a cost that's only going to get more onerous, and we are taking steps to look at reducing this burden by moving to a self-insuring model for a couple of our buildings. The initial COVID lockdown in 2020 also impacted our work party season, which actually reduced our R&M for the year. This is a lever we can temporarily pull to reduce outgoings, but it's not a long-term solution because all we're doing is pushing the issue down the road. R&M spend for the 2021 was $23,000, which was more in line with 2019. We continue to monitor all of our costs, and you can be assured that we're working really hard to see where we can either increase our income or reduce our costs. And that is the report from me. So I would like to move that the financial report for the year ended 31st of December 2021 be adopted and the auditor's report in the respect of the same time period be accepted. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Jim.
If there are no comments or questions, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? That is carried. Thank you very much. Right, now I just have to... Now the next item, once again, this is for you, Sonia. It's the appointment of the auditor.
I would like to move that RSC retain Hart & Co, who are our current auditors again for the 2022 year. Could I please have a seconder? Robin Dallas. All those in favour? Aye. Aye. All those any against? I move that as passed.
Yeah, that's carried. Thank you very much. Okay, we move on to item 5 on our agenda, which is a proposal to adopt a new constitution for Ruapehu Ski Club. Once again, this was a link to this was sent out with the notice of AGM, and so we're looking at adoption of the proposed 2022 RSC constitution. Now, committee relies on our constitution to give us direction in our actions and on behalf of the club. It's 10 years since we last looked at the constitution, and the world has changed considerably since then. Lessons learnt from COVID and the unexpected challenges thrown up by it, plus the need to be able to adapt to a changing world, meant that we felt we needed to check that the constitution provides both direction for us and the flexibility for committee to be able to act in a timely manner. We're pleased to be able to say that our existing 2012 constitution is holding up well in providing guidance for the committee and the club. However, there are some places which we felt would benefit from more clarity and also an allowance for technologies that have developed since the current constitution was written. The changes made to accommodate these are relatively minor. There are two main changes in the proposed constitution. The first one is the addition of a new membership type. The second is a reduction in the size of committee. With the new membership type, we're proposing to introduce a young adult membership type, which would cover our members from the age of 18, where currently they become a senior, and would take them through till their 22nd year, when they would then become a senior. The reason we have looked at doing this is we have had requests around this in the past. This new membership category will enable those younger members of the club to go down to the mountain by themselves, but not overburden them with an adult subscription. So they would pay adult bunk rates, but they would pay a junior subscription for those 3 years. With the reduction in the size of committee, I don't think it's any secret that committee has struggled to fill all the places, the 18 plus immediate past president. We have struggled over recent years, and in fact, John and I were trying to think of if we could remember any election for committee. I can't remember, there hasn't been an election for committee while I've been on committee. There was one election for vice presidents, but other than that, we struggle to find the full quotient of members that we need. So we are suggesting reducing the size of committee to 14. We've been running with 14 members most of this year, and actually we've found committee has functioned incredibly well. We're reducing the number of vice presidents to 3, and we're dropping a couple of committee members. John Payne and I are very happy to answer any questions you may have. So are there any questions? Yep.
I just wanted to ask, because I think this is a great idea, but given that in time hopefully things are going to get back to what we saw a few years ago, is it going to be easy enough then to increase the size of the committee if it's needed, so we're not held at that 14?
That's a hell of a good question, Robin, and what we are looking to do is reutilise subcommittees. They have tended to fall off what we do now. Subcommittees currently consist of, well, House Committee, one person, which is the person that's the House Committee on the committee. Ski activities has always had a reasonable group, but that number has dwindled as well. So in the advent that we need more urgently, we would utilise people through subcommittees rather than rush back to change the constitution. We are not looking to reduce what the committee does. It's just that, well, to be perfectly frank, we've had a few passengers over the last few years, and I've been on the committee for 28 years, and I would say in the last 10, in fact 15, because I was a passenger for a year or two as well, where work commitments just meant I couldn't put the amount of time in. And we would rather that we had committee members that were dedicated, got on with the job, and that you didn't ask somebody to do it and found out it didn't get done, and that's the worst case we can ever be in. So we are mindful of the fact that there is a lot of work that needs to be done, but we're also mindful of the fact that with a reduced number, we actually do get more work done. There's less talking and more action.
Oh, hi, William Meek. So an 18-year-old that's paid their subs this year is still a senior member, is that correct? Okay, and then they'll become a young adult member if they maintain that membership next year. Okay, and something just slightly pedantic, I think 25.3A's got a typo in it, so you might want to add a Y to deliver, just so the Constitution's good.
Thanks, William, and we'll fix that typo. And yes, you're absolutely right. This new membership category won't take effect until next year, as this year has already started. So someone who turns 18 this year will be able to move to that young adult membership next year. Are there any other questions? Yep.
Gay Dobby. I'm just interested in your idea of giving a reduced sub, and wondered why you stopped at 22.
What we were looking at was the number of young people, they turn 18 and they leave the club. we've lost them. And some come back, quite a number haven't. And our ski club's not unique in this, and neither is our sport. And I've been heavily involved in water polo, and we had the same problem. We introduced an under-21 category in water polo, and it was a resounding success. We gave them the opportunity, and they took it. Our marketing guys, Aaron did a huge amount of work when he was on the committee, looking at that age group, and his was the recommendation that we go to this age. Yeah, well, we looked at generally there's a lot of university students at that age, and it's a 4-year course. So 22 seemed to us the logical cut-off. We had to find a cut-off date, otherwise they'd have gone on forever. But we felt that at that point, that was the best cut-off. So, yeah.
Same reason.
Yeah.
Kids,
Yeah.
the young ones,
Yeah.
still belonging to the club.
Yeah.
So we've gone from 18 to
Yeah.
20.
Well, Aaron's research told him this age band, so, yeah.
I think also if we went to something like 30, we're getting a smaller group who are paying the full rate. You know, we're putting too much of a burden on those people. Yep. Yeah. Okay. Were there any other? Oh.
The other reason that we looked at that was also to reduce the burden on the parents. So we understand that people go away to varsity, and quite often to retain memberships, it is the parents paying the subs. So to make it that slightly easier for the parents to pay, or slightly more affordable for the student to pay, we introduced it for those 3 years.
I would add, easier for them to pay and also use the club. We want to see them down there using the club. Yeah. Are there any other questions? If there are no further questions, I would like to move that we adopt the proposed RSC 2022 Constitution. Do I have a seconder? So who have we got there? Fiona Lovecock. Thank you. In that case, if there's no further discussion, I will put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Any against? So that is carried. Thank you very much. And honestly, I think this will help your committee move forward and help the club move forward into the future that is a little uncertain. So we now move to item 6 on our agenda, which is the setting of annual subscriptions. No, I think I've pulled up the wrong one. So, yeah. So I'm going to hand over to Sonia to do that. Now, just remembering that these subscriptions would come into effect next year, not this year. We've already had our sub period for this year. So these would come into effect in March, April next year.
So I would like to move that the annual subscriptions move to the following for the various membership categories. We worked this out on roughly a 6% increase in line with inflation. Life members are still $0. Full senior members at $247.83 plus GST, so $285. Full young adult members at $90 plus GST, so $103.50. Junior, associate, veteran and adult Samba members at $90 plus GST, so again $103.50. And our summer junior and summer young adult members at $43.48 plus GST, so $50. Do I have a seconder? All in favour say aye. Aye. Any against? That's carried.
Thank you very much. We move on to a really nice part of the agenda now. It's the appointment of our patroness and patron for the coming year. RSC's been really fortunate to have Barbara Skelly and Peter Brady, both life members, agree to be our patroness and patron in the previous years, and they are happy
to continue in that role if we so desire. The role of patron and patroness is, I've got in my notes here, it's varied. I am going to say it's almost nebulous, and it's a role that committee most probably needs to pay more attention to. In the past, they have acted as a sounding board for committee on various issues, a connection back with the club and with our long-standing members. But over the last couple of years, especially with COVID and the separation we've all experienced in our lives, we have not been able to engage so much with Barbara and Peter. They're also unable to be here with us tonight, unfortunately. Barbara couldn't get up from Wellington, and Peter wasn't feeling quite well enough to come along. But it is still with much pleasure that I nominate Barbara Scully and Peter Brady to be our appointed respectively as patroness and patron of RSC for 2022-2023. Could I please have a seconder? Thank you, Jim. All those in favour, say aye. Aye. Any against? That is passed. And look, they are great members of our club. They have done a huge amount for our club over the years, which is why they're life members. And it is, I do have to say, it is always a pleasure when I ring them and chat to them. It is always so nice to have them there and to know that they're there filling those roles for us. Okay, right. Now, the next item is the election of our new committee. But before we move there, as I'm stepping down as president, and we also have a number of committee members stepping down too, I'd just like to make a few comments. Firstly, I'd like to thank both committees I've been privileged to work with in my 2 years as president. COVID threw up a lot of difficulties for us as a club, and we were lucky that we had this talented group of people at the helm. It's easy to start forgetting just how much of an extra workload COVID meant for us. But I want to thank them all, everyone, from this committee and the 2020 committee, for all their efforts on the club's behalf. The pressures of COVID also meant that 2 of our 2021 committee needed to take a step back from committee for a bit during the year. David McMillan had to step back, and Louise had to take a little break. But we're really pleased to see you back here with us, Louise. And I so enjoyed working with David. I really appreciated all his input. He was a bright, fresh look at things, always had really pertinent things to add to the discussions. And I do hope that we will see him back on committee in the future at some point. Louise, I'm glad your absence was only temporary. Look, I also want to mention our departing committee members, John Payne, and our immediate past president, Richard Nelson, because as I step down, I become the immediate past president. Richard will be leaving committee after 25 years, and a bit more will be said about this and later in the meeting. And much more will be said about the contributions that Richard has made to the club. But I'd just like at this point to say thank you, Richard, on behalf of the club. And personally, thank you also. I've really enjoyed working with you on the many projects we have done over the years. And I really appreciate your friendship. John, it's actually quite hard for me to express just how much you've done for me, helped me, and how much you've done for the club. It is quite amazing. And I'm just going to limit myself to thanking you for rejoining committee right when you thought you'd escaped, and helping us over the last 2 years. You've done a huge amount for us, and you've been a huge support for me. And the very last thing, as well as my thanks to committee, I'd really like to thank Marion. Marion is my really good friend. We've worked together ever since she came onto House Committee, which was in about 2012 or 13, I think. And without your help, Marion, I would not have been able to perform the role of president. So thank you very much. So now we move on to election of committee, and I'll hand over to Louise to read out the results of our election.
Okay, good evening. Thank you all. So, the new committee for 2022 is our new president is Catherine Gaffer. Our immediate past president becomes Phil Thomas. Our vice... Okay, I'm going to do all the vice presidents and then you can clap. Our vice presidents are Carl Burling, Lisa Fitzsimmons, Damon Forsyth, Marion Quinn and Donald Webster. Secretary is me again. Our treasurer is the amazing Sonia Quinn. We are welcoming Simon Hunt as club captain. Paula Cooper is remaining our club vice captain. So she's not here tonight because she's got the plague or something. Our general committee is Adrian Adrianson. How about I do them all and then we clap? Okay, so Adrian, then Ron Bonfra, Sam Hood, and then we have a number of new committee members. We have Drew Blair, Nicola Couch, Denise Ditchburn and Kevin Schluter, and I believe the only person in that group is Drew. Oh, and Fiona. Oh, sorry, Fiona. So come on up, guys. Oh, sorry, whoops, sit down. I'm ahead of the schedule. So now I will hand over to Catherine.
Well, actually, I have one last duty to introduce your new president, Catherine Gaffer, and I'd like to call Robin Dallas to come up and present the Bernard Drake Ice Axe.
Firstly, I'd like to say welcome to everybody who has come as well. And it's an honour for me to do this on behalf of Barbara, who is unable to get here. Normally this falls on patron or patroness. I'd like to just say one other thing, if I may, that this is the first time since Peter and Pam have been members of RSC that they haven't been at an AGM. And Peter wanted to pass on his best wishes to you and all of you for everything that you've done. Now, handing over the safekeeping of the RSC Acts generally happens once every 3 years. It's a tradition that goes back to our two founders, Bernard Drake, who was the original owner of this axe, and Bill Mead, who was our first president. All of these little shields on here have the names of every president that RSC has had. So it's a very special and treasured part of our club. Both of these men were incredibly fit, they were adventurous, and most importantly, they had a vision. And it was on the 31st of July 1913 that they made their commitment. And that was quite simply written on a piece of paper, "We will form a ski club." And the story goes that that bit of paper was then stuck onto the end of the axe and stuck into the ground. And that's how we started. You'll find in Alan Graham's book, I don't know, well, I'm sure most of you have that book, The 100 Years of Skiing at Ruapehu, a picture up at the Crater Lake, Boxing Day 1913, with the ice axe up there. After this, after World War I, Bernard returned severely wounded and crippled, and sadly he never skied again. Some of you may know or have heard of Julian Tim, who is a very old club member and an old friend of Bernard Drake's, and he was also a president, but I couldn't tell you which year it was. He tells of a couple of stories, one of going round to see Bernard, who would use this as his prop in the garden. And not only was it his prop, but it actually held his memories of a life that he no longer was able to live in. So a very special part. The other thing that Julian had mentioned is about how the ice axe once was taken up to the crater and it was taken back. I believe it was Julian who took it back to Bernard and told him it had been up to the crater, and apparently it was quite an emotional reunion, and his words were, "So you've seen the lake again," which I think is quite special. When Bernard died in 1916, Julian, who was a past president at that, 1961, I'm sorry. Just checking. So he then asked Julian, who was obviously, as you can have heard, a good friend, to become the trustee of the axe, and when the club reached 100 years old, to hand it over to the club. So many of you were at our centenary, and you may remember Bill Spate, who was then our patron, handing the club axe over to John, and the ownership of the axe was then transferred to the club. There's a number of past presidents here tonight, and I'm sure they all agree that the responsibility they take on as a president and the success of that task has been achieved by the support they get from the committee, their family, and RSC membership at large. Excuse me. What's always amazed me about our club is that our success is not only contributed to the committee, who obviously do an amazing job, there's no denying that, but the members at large who, as John was referring to, the subcommittees that pull in and help. And that's what makes us a family club. Membership becomes a way of life. Many of us here today were kids on the mountain, and some of our families have, I don't know, Gay, what generation are you up to? 4 generations? 5? 5 yeah, so, I mean, it's just wonderful. Very unique and special. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank Phil for his leadership over the last 2 years. It certainly has not been an easy one when you have to navigate our club around mountain life with COVID. You have carried out your team successfully, your extensive knowledge of the club, your organisation, your quietness, your calmness. Thank you. We all thank you. Our incoming president, Catherine's been a member since 2007. Many of you will know Catherine with her roles as vice and club captain. I think most of us here already appreciate the huge work both she and Damon have done to date. Catherine, you're probably unaware of the huge respect you already have within the club, and I've no doubt you'll carry this responsibility extremely well. So Phil, as our retiring president, and on behalf of Ruapehu Ski Club, could you please pass the axe to our new president? Catherine, I ask you on behalf of the members of the Ruapehu Ski Club, will you accept this responsibility during your term of office for the care and safekeeping of our original and founding icon, the Bernard Drake ice axe?
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
So my very last duty is to hand over to Catherine the presidential badge, which is handed from president to president down through the years as well. Would you like to say a few words?
I'm only going to say a few words. I hope that I'm able to carry out all the work that's needed as president, following in the footsteps of all those amazing presidents that have been before us. And it's wonderful to have a changed constitution, and as a member of the committee it just makes us feel a little bit freer to actually go and do some things on your behalf with the changes that we've made. And let's have a good ski season this year. Yay! Thank you. Okay, so from here on, I'm in charge. So we missed a little thing a little way back when we were talking about the members of the committee that were leaving. We have some gifts to give Richard and John. So we'll just present them now. That's John. Thank you. We're going to have a photo. Stand back. Stand back in the light.
I just wanted to check on the quality of the wine.
It's been a COVID year, John. and to Richard. I have to say thank you to Richard too, because he supported me through my first years as club captain and all the work that goes on behind the scenes with that. So thank you, Richard. Now we're going to call up the new members to present their pins. Drew. Welcome to the committee. I don't think we need to say. And Fiona. Welcome aboard. Now we're on to item 9 of the agenda, which is election of the Heritage Fund Guardians and Treasurer of the Heritage Fund. The special general meeting in April 2009 established the role of the Guardians of the Heritage Fund and appointed 4 Guardians who retire at each AGM. The Guardians over the past 12 months have comprised of 2 life members, currently Bernard Smith and Robin Dallas, the immediate past president Adrian Adrianson, and the president my script might be wrong. Okay, the immediate past president Richard Nelson and the president Phil Thomas. Oh, that's who? Oh, am I? Okay, yeah. Okay. Who's the treasurer of the fund then? Oh, he is still. Oh, this part's right. Mike Wardle is willing to continue as treasurer of the fund. Bernard Smith and Robin Dallas, as life members, have agreed to be the life member guardians of the Heritage Fund. Phil Thomas, as the immediate past president, and myself as the president, will fulfil the other 2 positions of guardians. Could we please have someone nominate that the Guardians of the Heritage Fund until the club's next AGM be life members Robin Dallas, Bernard Smith, the immediate past president Phil Thomas, and the present president Catherine Gaffer, and the treasurer Mike Wardle. That's Matt Lamb. And do I have a seconder? John Payne. Is there any discussion? If not, I shall put the motion. All those in favour? Aye. Any against? Carried. Now we're up to item 10, nomination of life members. It is my great pleasure to invite the Honours Committee to come forward to nominate 2 members for life membership to the Ruapehu Ski Club.
So, on behalf of the Honours Committee, we had 2 nominations this year for life membership. I'll be speaking to the first, and Adrian will be speaking to the second. So it's with great pleasure that the Honours Committee nominate Richard Nelson for life membership. I've always believed a good speech is a short speech, so this is only one-sided page, which probably won't do justice for Richard because his contributions to the club have been phenomenal. A lot of it has been back office, it's for the lack of that terrible expression. But Richard joined the club when he was a child. His parents were very active, and Richard has continued to be a very active member. He first joined the committee in 1979. He was probably one of the youngest people we've ever had on committee. He only lasted 1 year. The love of skiing got in the way, actually. He became a ski instructor and alternated between New Zealand and Sweden, working all winters and no summers for several years. And Richard still is a very, very good skier, and I wouldn't take instruction from him, but he is a good skier.
I don't think so.
I don't take instructions from anybody. Yeah. Yeah. And my sister. Richard rejoined the committee in 1991 and for 2 years served on as our club vice captain. And then he had another 2-year breather and then came back again in 1995, and he's been here ever since. So all in all, I'm sorry Phil, you got it wrong. It's 30 years, not 25, and it is absolutely quite phenomenal. He's the longest serving member we have in the club on committee. I went back and did some extensive research, which in Alan's book is bloody hard to do because all the different positions you have to coagulate. So it's been good. I had the honour of serving with Richard since 1995, really, on the committee. Richard developed the booking system, which has been a huge asset to this club. I would hate to put a dollar value on his contribution to that. All his time and effort has been as a donation to the club. He's never charged us a brass razoo for developing something that would cost tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars if we had to go out and buy it. It's been absolutely phenomenal. As the author of that system, when I was treasurer, I worked with Richard on the finance and IT subcommittee and got to know him pretty well at that stage, and we've worked together on a number of projects since. Last year we worked on integrating the booking system into the accounting system, and that's been a phenomenal success, and it was pretty damn seamless, and I think I thank Richard for that at the last AGM, and I really can't speak enough or highly enough of Richard for what he has done there. He developed our database for our members so that we're able to keep track of you, and he also did a race administration system that's been used with the Hainsley Cup for recording and other things, which I think Catherine has had the benefit of. Yeah. So I'd just like to say, Richard, it's been an honour, a privilege and a pleasure. So thank you very much, and I'm very pleased to offer you the life membership on behalf of the club. You can unwrap this at your leisure.
Thank you very much. I feel very privileged to have been granted life membership. Ruapehu Ski Club has always been a huge part of my life, and it's certainly been a privilege and a pleasure to serve the club. Coming onto committee, my biggest interest was applying computer technology to membership and booking operations, In the beginning, the membership registry was like a library card system with lots of little cards in a long, narrow drawer and that kind of thing. And it took like a week to generate and pack and send all of the subscriptions with a crew of like half a dozen people, and the same thing with the booking with the AGM papers as well. Bookings were recorded on a huge sloping table that had kind of like an array of A4 pages that was set out like a huge spreadsheet with one column for each day and a row for each bunk. And to send the bunk lists up to the mountain, you had to take the right pages out of the system there and then feed them through a fax machine, and so that they could be sent up to the mountain. Thinking about the administration officers, Carol first of all, and then Sue, and then Cheryl, and then Paula, and finally Sienna. They've all played a huge role in the development of these systems, providing lots of advice and feedback and everything. And they're all really receptive and keen adopters of new technology. But above all, everything else, they had huge, huge patience. At the same time, websites for the club were established, and we have Phil to thank for that. And we also embraced broadband internet as it became available, and Matt Lamb was largely responsible for that as our network and security, and as of this evening, our broadcasting guru. At this point in time, we can even monitor the power usage and even control the power usage in all of our buildings, which has had a major impact on our fixed costs. And for that, we can thank Damon and Richard Horton. We also computerised the racing events for the club, the Hansie Cup and the club championships. And our previous club captains, especially Lisa, were totally instrumental and pivotal in the success of those systems. They provided functional guidance, testing feedback, documentation, and they also had a huge amount of patience. I'm having trouble with this. I always struggle with technology. So, over the last 20 years, the club has had to endure quite a few challenges. Eruptions, bad snow years, the emergence of alternative markets, and a general decline in the support of sporting clubs. A brief moment where some people might have considered that we're operating under a rather hostile operational environment, and finally the pandemic. But despite that, I feel that the spirit of the club has never been stronger, and it's just been fabulous. You know, I love the club. I love everything about the club, and especially the people. And I thank you very much for this privilege that has been granted to me. Thank you very much.
Adrian.
Thanks, Catherine. Is this working? Honours Committee, John already stole half my lines, because Honours Committee also received a nomination for Phil, and for this we have to step aside a little bit from the norm. Normally we wait for the president to finish off his immediate past presidency, but in this case, Phil, health is getting the better of Phil, and that's why we brought forward this nomination. So Phil, if you'd like to come forward. While Phil makes his way out, I can remember, and we just discussed it a few days ago, I can remember meeting Phil in the lodge in the early 2000s, and he was full of enthusiasm. He was a club member for a long time. and hadn't been to the club for a number of years. But in the lodge, we had a jolly good time, and he loved it so much. He was a great time. His daughter learned to ski, and we had a ball of a time. So. Hang on, I've got to find the beginning of the page. Phil joined the committee in 2004, and mainly to look after the office computers, and also to help Richard. So I was at that end, help Richard with building the website, and he did pretty well. So by 2006, we had our first website up on screen, which was a major advancement in club history. So shortly after that, Phil also took on the maintenance for the chalet. He became involved, and he's the one that drove ahead with putting the pallet fire in and a number of other items and bits and pieces, and really went to work on that one. His enthusiasm never stopped, so he actually took on more work in running work parties for the lodge, the hut, the chalet, Turoa, I think. You were the main instigator in running all the work parties, and we could contact Phil and order our paints. Phil would organise all the tools and get to work on that. I remember one year at the back of the hut, we had a scaffold building race. We always tried to get a number of people out for the January work parties, which we never succeeded in. Phil put his hand up, let's both put the scaffold up, and we had 4 youngsters and we went racing. He beat me to it. I'll never forget. Let's see where we go. Phil stood down in 2011 and 2012, I think. 1 year you missed, and it was due to illness as well. And that was like the beginning of your decline in your health, unfortunately. I actually had to do a lot of research, and I read 18 years of bulletins from Alan Graham to find out and dig up a lot of dirt. The one thing that I noticed is that besides Phil running the work parties, he always got into the fly fishing. Some of you here, I think, went fly fishing with Phil. He organised those weekends. He organised a number of other events as well. And reading through the bulletins, there was not many bulletins where Phil hadn't written an article in there, either by upcoming fly fishing weekends or past fly fishing weekends or upcoming work parties or past work parties. But there was a consistent number of articles in the bulletin from Phil. So Phil ended up organising, running all the work parties, all the buildings, we know that. Phil was an instigator in setting aside $60,000 a year for maintenance. He was the real driver of that, because Phil was disappointed, like we're always scrambling, like all the bills were paid and whatever was left over was for the maintenance, and Phil got somewhat disgruntled with that, and he just put his foot down. He says, we want $60K a year, and we can divvy that up between the buildings, which is one of the things. It was hard to follow the last 2 years because of finances. But I'm pretty sure if we're looking for a good season this year, we'll be back into the 60K. Phil and Richard, they integrated the booking system. There was a lot of work from Phil, like was mentioned before, with Richard. So that was real helpful. And from then on, we started doing our bookings and our cancellations online, which saved the office staff a lot of work. Phil also took on the role of house committee. What year was that? Don't know, 2012? Yeah, took on house committee, organised all the food and all the equipment that was needed for the season from then on. It was actually, Phil took on so much, we actually had to hold him down a little bit, because the rest of the committee was just about to resign, I think, because Phil just basically did it all. So 1 year Phil could not run the work party, so he asked me to step in for him, and he wrote me like a list like yay long, and it basically told me everything, what to do, how to do it, when to do it, and it even told me when it was time for a cup of tea and lunch. The only thing he forgot to put down is how to make the cup of tea, but we'd figured it out by ourselves. 2014, Phil joined RMCA on behalf of RSC, although he told us I'm there for all the clubs, but it was great input from Phil, and we got a lot of feedback from Phil doing the RMCA. One year when I was the presidency and did the new committee, put the names down, I accidentally put Phil down as the chalet maintenance officer, and Phil didn't like that because that was toned down. He was the chalet officer, and he told me so. So I had to rename that in the bulletin. We managed. You remember that, Phil? Yeah, see? Was a good phone call. I can remember vividly. Phil became vice president in 2014, continued all his hard work, doing the buildings, parties, work maintenance, and showing new members around the buildings. That was one of Phil's things as well. Whenever there was a work party, he took time out, took the new members, showed them all the ins and outs. And I don't know whether there's many new members here, but Phil took time out and showed them the buildings, which was really good. He always liked to turn the switches on and off, I think. I'm nearly there, Phil. Phil helped John Payne also reviewed the RSC Constitution. We already know that. There's a number of other items that Phil done as well. And being in the chair, he guided us through the COVID period, forming subcommittees. You did a lot of the finance stuff with John Payne as well. The other thing I can remember from Phil is that when he became president, he basically threw out the old agenda that had everything written down nice and neatly and formed a whole new agenda, because the old agenda we'd used for the last 85 years or so. So he made a lot of changes, had a lot of ideas. As Phil says, he hasn't completed them all, but because of his health, we think it's really important that we nominate Phil for his life membership. The main thing that stood out for me, that I know over the years that I've been working with Phil, is that whenever there was a problem and whenever somebody was looking for somebody to help out, Phil was the one to put his hand up, and he was always there, and his enthusiasm for the club has always been next to nothing. Phil, much appreciated for all your hard work, and I truly think that you deserve your life membership. Sorry. There we go. You can open it at your leisure. I will. I know what's in there.
You might have one similar, yeah.
Yeah, no, you go for it.
Actually, look, firstly, I just want to say that I've, for the first time ever, discovered 2 members of the Honours Committee. It's a shadowy, dictatorial committee. You don't get asked a question if you would like to become a life member. You get told it's happening. And because of that dictatorial nature, after being president, I can't wait to get onto the Honours Committee and just give out dictates like that. Yeah. When I was rung and told that the Honours Committee was recommending me for life membership, I burst into tears on the phone, and then it was mentioned again at our committee meeting on Monday, and I burst into tears again then. So I think we've got a good chance of the hat trick tonight. They're actually starting already. I want to say I'm absolutely humbled by this honour, and I'm a little overwhelmed. I look at the list of our life members and feel like I'm walking amongst our giants. It feels strange to be included with a group of people who have done so much for our club. And I was so pleased to see Jebby tonight, because when I think of hard work in our club, I always think of Jebby. You've done so much for us, Jebby, and I always used you as a role model for doing things. You always were down there working away. I love our club, I always have, and I've always felt that RSC has given me more than I've ever given to the club, and that includes all my time on committee. the best parts of me, the parts that I like the most, are parts that come from RSC. As a teenager attending working parties, I learnt so many lessons about people working together for a common goal, about often people being keen to help but not knowing what to do. So if you do, step up and take charge. About how you can't expect someone to do something you wouldn't do yourself. And if you would do it, instead of arguing about who should, you might as well just step up and do it yourself. These and other skills I learned from watching the adults of the club as a child have served me through my life. I have so many happy memories of Ruapehu and of the club. My first work party, I think I was 13 at the time, and I found myself on a Saturday morning up on the roof of the lodge with a pile of sandpaper scrapers and some paint, and a bunch of people all older than me who didn't have a clue what to do. And we were all just looking at each other, and I thought, oh, well, I know how to paint. So I started giving out jobs to people. I just about fell off the roof when they started doing them. But we had a great weekend, and we painted that roof, and had a lot of fun. Another work party, I was working with 2 other boys, and we were dragging sledfuls of truck weekend food across from the lift to the lodge. Anyone who remembers how we used to do it back in the bad old days of the 70s and 80s will remember that job. It got dark. It was thick mist. We couldn't see where we were going. The adults had all retreated inside long ago, and they'd totally forgotten about us. And when we finally finished and came in, we were almost black. We were covered in ash from an eruption we didn't know was going on while we were out there. But my best memories are of family, and that's what RSC is all about. I used to come to the mountain with my mother when I was young, and every fine evening we would go outside the back door of the lodge and watch the sunset reflecting off the pinnacles. Or we'd climb the ridge across Hut Flat so we could watch Mount Taranaki. And it was my job to carry the ingredients and then pour Mum a gin and tonic while we sat there. She was very fond of her gin and tonics. It was also, you know, we had to carry our food and everything up in those days. And she had the emergency pack, which consisted of a bottle of gin and 2 bottles of tonic. And then I would carry everything else. I remember the excitement of my nephews and niece seeing snow for the first time with my mother and myself, and then staying at RSC. And then I also remember taking my own daughter to RSC. And now I'm hoping to introduce my grandson, who's visiting from Australia at the moment. He's 4.5, and I'm hoping to take him to the snow and the chalet on the weekend, well, after the weekend. I've enjoyed all the roles I've had on committee, and it did sound like more than I remember, actually. But I've always, whatever role I've been doing, as I said, I've always felt I've got more back than I've given. I loved running the work parties. I think it was my favourite job. And my very first work party in charge was probably the best. If you were there, you'd remember it. It was chair surfing Friday night in the chalet, and a very, very late start the next day. We all had the most terrible hangovers. I used to love having young children come on the work parties. I ran as well. I loved seeing their enjoyment and their pride of achievement from the jobs that they did. They're the future of our club, and it's just so enjoyable watching them explore the mountain. I worked hard to make sure people on the work parties felt their weekend had been worthwhile. If you did one of my work parties and didn't enjoy it, I am sorry. I hope it helps to know that I most probably had a great time. I think the most important job I ever did was House Committee, and my hat's off to current House Committee. They're the people that give you your experience on the mountain. You know, they're the people that organise what you get to eat for dinner, how good the cook or chef is. They're the ones that make sure all the bedding has been dry cleaned and everything is kept tidy and that there's enough toilet paper and all those things. And I honestly think it is the most important job on committee. And I think other than that, You know, I would recommend to anyone, these younger ones of you there, to don't be afraid of putting your hand up for committee. It's been an absolute blast the last 18 years. There's been frustrations, but I have enjoyed it immensely. I've enjoyed all the people I worked with. I have made some dear, dear friends, and I'm not sorry to be standing down. I know I need to take a bit of time for myself. I am absolutely overwhelmed by this honour. Yeah, and thank you very much.
Are they? No, the life membership badges. Okay. So this brings us to the last item on the agenda, and that's general business. Is there any general business? Please remember that as we are live streaming, you'll need to use this microphone to speak. I would remind members that we have 2 clipboards being circulated, one to put your name on as attendees and one for any apologies you have. Please make sure you fill in the correct list before leaving this evening. Is there any general business?
Hi, I'm Daniel Thomas. I'm Misha Thomas's father. I just wanted to extend our thanks for the support we got from the committee for Misha this year. Hopefully you got the thank you that she sent you as well. She had a fantastic time in Switzerland, actually managed to ski a day with Florian in Davos as well, which was quite a treat for her. And she's, this end of last month, got selected for National Development Squad. So she's on track for 2026 or 2030 Olympics. So hopefully watch this space. She's heading down to Wanaka to start training Friday. So we're looking forward to seeing what she does in the Open Division this year. Thanks.
Any other general business? Thanks, William.
Bernard Sporley, is there any update on the situation of ownership of the 2 ski fields and the relationship with RAL?
Yeah. As far as the ownership of the 2 ski fields, RAL still maintains ownership of both Turoa and Whakapapa. For those who aren't aware of RAL's challenges, they are certainly challenged for cash at the moment. They have some big debt obligations, and they have some responsibilities to those people who lent money to make sure that they maintain good cash flow and profitability of the ski fields. So that has had them look quite hard at their operation to see how they can best continue to provide ski field services to the skiers and life pass holders. One thing they were considering was if they found the right buyer for Turoa, they may look to sell that ski field to generate some cash and also to relieve them of some quite large future cash flow requirements to upgrade the Turoa ski field. But at this stage, they have not made any decision to sell. It's just an option that they have for consideration. They did make some comments at their shareholder meeting a couple of weeks back. If they were to sell it, it would have to be to the right buyer, which was encouraging to hear. The right buyer in RAL's mind is a local owner, which was encouraging to hear. It was also an owner which would honour the life passes that RAL has already issued. So RAL was talking the right talk at the meeting to reassure us life pass holders, the stakeholders, the clubs, all those who enjoy skiing at the mountain, that the skiers' interests will be taken into account if they make any decision on selling Tūroa. What RAL is hopeful of is a good ski season this season. If they have a good ski season this season, it'll take some pressure off, and they can hopefully get some of their debt levels down, and that they'll be able to then have a successful summer season, generating cash from the gondola, which they haven't been able to do in the last 2 COVID years with lack of tourism. So the gondola that was put in was expected to make a lot of cash for them in the summer months, but as I say, COVID certainly stopped that happening for them. So a lot for REL is dependent on a good ski season this season and a good summer season with tourism using the gondola. If those things work well for REL, then the future is looking, what you'd have to say, reasonable. If they have another tough season, they have some tough decisions to make. But as I say, they at the shareholder meeting, as I say, from what I saw of it, they were very much focusing on the good of the local community at Mount Ruapehu and the skiing community as well. And I think the tone of the meeting seemed quite good from what I observed, and there's a lot of support from life pass holders and stakeholders to try and help REL get through this tight situation they're in at the moment. Phil can just speak on the relationship with REL.
In terms of, thanks, Damon. In terms of the relationship between RSC and RAL, I'm really pleased to say that it is returning to how it has always been in the past. Steve Mahanui is in charge of Whakapapa. He is always keen to help us as much as he can. John O'Dean, the new CEO, is also very friendly towards us, and I catch up with them on stakeholder meetings with DOC. We have 2 sets of them, and they're 3 times or 4 times a year. So I either catch up with them in person or on Zoom, and yes, I'm really pleased to say that our relationship is returning to the friendly one it has always been in the past. The main issue remaining for us is downloading on the chairlift from the lodge to top of the Bruce, and that is still a difficulty. But talking with Steve, I've had indications from him that for special occasions, so perhaps Club Week, we may be able to do something as a one-off, but it's quite a way for them to row back to let us download.
Another question from me. Just there was a decision in Treasurer's report not to insure the chalet and the hut. I'm really interested in what would happen in terms of a rebuild if we had a fire that burned one of those to the ground, and what the committee would plan to do in that circumstance.
Our discussions on that weren't taken lightly, I'll let you know that. But what we are faced with is an affordability situation for the club. The insurance is likely to go up again when we look at our renewal in 2 months' time. 2 reasons for the insurance going up. One is the value of the buildings. The replacement value, if we were to rebuild, goes up every year, and so therefore the asset value you're insuring for is increasing, so your premium goes up by that percentage. So if it costs us 20% more to rebuild that building, that automatically adds 20% more to our premium when we reinsure. The other thing that's going up is the insurance companies' fees are going up as well. So not only are we paying an increase in our insurance premium based on the building replacement cost going up, the insurers themselves are charging more for the insurance as well. So we've had some substantial increases over the years. We've held back with our insurance last year. We were paying just over $72,500 That was with us taking some very large excesses as well. If we hadn't taken the large excesses, we'd be up paying $80,000 for the insurance. And with our current membership numbers where they are, it takes a lot of our subscription income just to cover the insurance on the buildings. So that is one of our costs which we can't control. And so we looked at the options of what we could do, and we felt that if we just insured 2 of our buildings for full replacement, which would be the lodge and Turoa, and we self-insured the hut and the chalet, it would reduce our insurance premiums to what we felt were a bit more affordable. Now, you asked the question about what would we do if we had a loss. And we did discuss that, and we do believe we do have some options. If, for example, if we had a loss at the chalet, there's a vacant building right next door to us there, which was given up by the building owners, and they've gifted it to Doc. Doc doesn't want it. So we do think an option could be, if we had a loss of the chalet, we could approach Doc and we could take over that building right next to us. So we do believe that that could be an option for us. As I say, obviously we wouldn't want to lose a building, but we do think that could be an option. If we lost the hut in a total loss situation, then we would look to approach other ski clubs, which we know there is other ski clubs on the mountain which are not in strong financial position. And we do believe there's a possibility we could negotiate with other ski clubs to either acquire their building for perhaps a price, or we could even just take it for a nominal value and be able to use some of those facilities. I think what a lot of our members might consider our buildings are assets, but unfortunately the buildings could be considered a liability. Downhill Ski Club certainly found that out when they could no longer, their membership could no longer sustain their building out west, and they've actually had to liquidate their club to come up with the funds to remove that building off the mountain. Nobody wanted that building. There has been 2 other buildings on the ski club that have sold in the last 7 or 8 years. One of them sold for $1. And that was taken over by a trust, which was a school and some other groups got together. They bought the building for $1. So our buildings, you could argue, don't have much value at all. As I say, from a market value point of view, our Turoa building is the building we do believe has a market value. So that's one of the reasons why we are choosing to insure Turoa. It does have a market value. We could sell it on the market and get something for it if we wanted to. I'm not saying we want to, but it does have a market value. We don't believe that the hut has a market value. We don't believe the chalet has a market value because the building alongside us remains empty and unwanted. So those are 2 buildings we don't believe actually have a market value. The lodge doesn't have a market value either, but it's got a lot of sentimental value. And if we were to lose the lodge, we would certainly want to rebuild that building. So that was one building we felt we would continue to insure with an outside insurer to ensure that the funds would be available should we lose that significant building of ours. And as far as self-insuring the other buildings, the money that we're saving by not insuring those 2 are going to be put into a reserve fund. So those will be funds held by the club, so that if there's minor damage to those buildings, we've got the funds on hand to repair them. But the other thing that reserve fund we're proposing to use it for is we are obliged by our licence to remove our buildings from the site at the end of our licence period, or if we determine we no longer want that building. So we do have contingent liabilities. The club has contingent liabilities in the order of about $600,000 to remove the lodge, the hut, and the chalet from the Tongariro National Park at the end of our licence, if we don't get granted a new one, or if we determine that we don't use those buildings anymore. And at the moment, the club does not have the funds to do that. So what we're hoping to do with this reserve fund, the reserve fund will be set aside. It'll be used for any insurance related issues that we may have for the chalet and Tūroa. And over time, those funds will grow, and that'll give us our funds if we have to remove those buildings off the mountain at some point in time in the future, which is a possibility that we need to face as a club and a committee. As I say, Downhill Ski Club actually liquidated their club. They had to sell their building in National Park to fund the removal of their Downhill Ski Club on the field. So we don't want to be in that position, so we plan to set aside some funds so we're in a strong position going forward. Does that explain our thinking there?
Yes, Colin Upchurch. I was pleased to hear that Phil mentioned that the relationship with RAL is on the improve. That's good news to hear. I just wondered, does anyone have any update for us on the operation of the Rangatira lift uploading if you're not wearing skis? Is that any movement in that, or can we have an update on what you think the procedure might be this season?
Hi, Colin. There's no official improvement in that agreement about the 15 minutes. So 8:45 to 9 a.m. in the morning and 3:45 to 4 in the evening. However, relationships have improved so much. You know, we're back to, as Steve said to me or texted, you know, we're going back to the old days. So officially, no, but in practice, yes. They've been very generous to us. I just think that if we treat them with respect, then they'll treat us with respect. And I think that it's a two-way street. Certainly, as far as you guys are concerned, it's not a problem at all to give them a ring and let them know that there's some people arriving and they might need to upload without skis on, and they're very, very accommodating in those circumstances, so that's not a problem. But officially, because they need to do this for the whole ski field, not just for us, they are still officially 8:45 to 9 and 3:45 to 4. But they're pretty good.
Was there anyone else for general business? Oh, I'll have to go back to my script. Okay, there being no further business, I declare the meeting closed at 9:12. Thank you, everyone. Oh, tea and coffee and cake or something like that at the back.
Congratulations, Madam President.
Thank